All right, a quick note here on brushes, and in particular how brushes are not only used for painting, but they can carry an image that can serve other purposes. And in particular, if you look at the brushes that are here under the settings, there are several categories of brushes. There's an algorithmic pen. There are some internal brushes with many different presets or choices. These are brush images, and you'll find them here somewhere. In fact, you can find them right here under shapes. And so these are some of the smaller images, and some folks have donated collections, and you'll see occasionally new ones being added here. And so these are relatively small images. You can convert them to the from the internal format to the custom brush format, and there's an option for that here somewhere as well. It might actually be here, custom, somewhere there. I forget where it is, but I don't do this too often, because very often when I use a custom brush, it's that I create one either from scratch. And there's one really easy way to do it right here. Simply in the custom tab to drag this, and you now have a custom brush. It's a fairly big one. You can use the preview here, the eye, to show the on-screen preview, and you see it's a little dark. If I switch to the swap image, we see it perhaps a little bit better if it's bright. And so this one actually is kind of semi-transparent, so if I set the opacity, we'll get a better picture, similar to this one here. You can set the bias to be a little bit different, a little bit tighter like this. And so now this is actually something that's really great for space art. If you make a very tight bias and a relatively small size altogether, you can create space nebula with that quite nicely. Let's make it even smaller on the bias, even lower. And the cell size, that you can adjust as well. The cell density, that's like how many there are. And so you create bristles and stuff like that. But really the idea is that you have many other ways to create custom brushes, and there are in fact some tools down here to load a pattern, something like this break pattern, into the custom brush, right? And then so you can, most of these images really are tileable, so you can use them in fill tools as well, and in other, not just in brushes for painting. And that's really what I want to show, is that the custom brush system is something that can be used in many other ways than just for painting with the brush. And so one place to do that, for instance, would be with the fill tool. If you go to the fill tool here and you have the fill settings, you see that the brushes that I just loaded is here now. The pattern fill, when you press and hold that, you see it's tiling it, and you can load a new one. It goes to the same pattern collection here. You know that I've quite often used the dry mud here, the mud pattern. But any of these really go into the brush. You can see that if you go to the brush menu and store the brush and manage it, you can see that that brush is indeed right here as well. So what I want to show is really something a little bit different, and that's to not use the brush for painting, but to use as part of the rendering. There are several places where rendering occurs, and one of them that's quite prominent is a 3D renderer called PuppyRay, and we typically use something like this background image as a pattern to perhaps mimic a cityscape, right? And we might want to carve a few more dark spots in there. Let me go with my linear tool again here, and with the linear tool in graphical styles, and let's hide this brush, and I'm gonna go over here, move this over here, and simply go and draw some extra dark spots there, or bands. Now I want to have, let me do this, undo this a little bit here. I want to have that at low opacity, so I can do it a few times in not too much of destructive mode. So if I do this several times, you can see it gets darker every time, keeps going, but not too quickly. But I do have a a general path carved, maybe a more narrow one. I can change the size here as well, and perhaps increase the opacity now a little bit, something like that. And so I have a couple of streets going across here, Avenue of the Americas, Broadway, going across in different angles. And so this can be an interesting height map or elevation map. You can always also further adjust it with perhaps the curves tool. And in the curves tool, you want to lower the darks and keep higher for the brights. So you get some couple of city blocks going up really high. But for the most part, it's kind of in the middle ground. And maybe actually do a tiered approach where you have some at the little plateau, and then some more, and then plateau, and then some more up here. So you will see neighborhoods at certain levels and others. This one here is down at the street level, all the way flat, and so that way you get an interesting distribution of buildings and blocks that might be indicative of a city block, big city or something. And I'm going to go now and create an animation out of that. Now, if you're on PD Artist, that's a step you would not be able to do, but I'm going to go, let's say, 234 frames. And I'm going to store this in case I want to get back to that really quickly. So store this in memory or on disk. And I do have another one here already. I'm going to go delete this one. So that frees up quite a bit of disk space. So now I'm going to go and render that with the, where is it here, Puppy Ray. Let's go first to the CPU version. So if you have a high-speed CPU, that's a good one to experiment with. You can preview here your viewing. You can navigate through that and perhaps enable. So now I want to go back to that brush thing, right? So we have skies here, and these are actually a couple of presets. You see them here. The sky is blue. If you look up, turn the camera up here. Yep, there it is. In fact, you can take the zoom as well here. The zoom on the CPU version is actually a number, so we need to show more. Where do we do more? Down here, to show more on the interface. And the camera would be here, the zoom. If I go down to a higher number, let's say 4, you see it's zooming in, 5, 6, something like that. So now I see the the cityscape in the far distance and the ones in the close up here. It's a little bit smoothed. That's because the pre-filtering is still there at 0.5 default. Right? You can show a very eroded landscape or a very crisp one, especially if you disable the interpolation. There it is. If you disable the interpolation, that's when you have that blocky look that looks like little building blocks. Every pixel of that height map, of that elevation map, turns into a square or rectangle, as it were. And you can come in really close and see each of those, right? Let's see if I can depict that now. You may need to go to higher quality, so let's go to high quality and ray trace. So this is the CPU version, which is not going to render immediately on the fly. You have to trigger, you have to request that with the ray trace button here, right? And of course, once you've done your final view, your scene, you'll be ready to do your final highest quality rendering, or even further refine the ray steps and the anti-aliasing steps. And we misspelled that one there, steps. But so, for instance, what I want to look at now is the lighting. See, these blocks here are very dark on that side. And that is something we fixed by enabling global illumination. Right? Now, what does it use for the global illumination? Well, what it will use is, in fact, your sky. If I look at the camera up here, this sky is serving as an image-based illumination onto the entire scene, the global illumination. And enabling that will lighten up the dark sides here. So if you see right now here, it's much lighter, right? If I turn the global illumination off, there's quite a difference. And the difference is controlled by what's actually in that image, right? If I take the dark image like this one here, it's not that bright. You still get some amount, you can control how much of that illumination comes from the sky, but it's not that impressive because the sky is really dark here. Now this one is the one we had seen earlier. That's the custom brush that I had loaded, and that one can serve as a global illumination image just the same way. And so here is our dry mud in the sky. Right, and it serves as a global illumination just as much as actually the sky image that we see. So the trick really is to get an interesting looking sky here. We don't want to have this dry mud up there, because that would be a city standing upside down or hanging over a piece of mud. What we want instead is really an impressive sky with clouds and stormy appearance, or a serene look, beautiful sunset, whatever it is that you need in your game or for your art. What I'm going to do is show you, let's call this one done for now, and I'm going to replace this image with one that I actually have on file. So I'm going to go to the brush image for that. You can open an image and load it straight to the brush, to the custom brush. So here is a folder in which I have some images, and these images are actually from the Dogwaffle of the moment. And these are artwork by Draws Attention, and you may have seen the newsletter where we talk about some of these recent skies, and we have varied versions of that. There is one here that actually went into the game also. There is an interesting one here, piece of artwork with planets and all of these done in Dogwaffle, but there is one that I wanted to use, this one here, Poison. So that one is a very wide angle, and it's quite suitable for using as a sky image. Now we might want to do some extra processing after we load it in to kind of not see the pole that's going to concentrate this entire area. If we make it seamless, then that's already a good step in that direction. What's the dimension on this? Well, we'll see. It doesn't matter really. It's a fairly high resolution, probably 3000 pixels wide or something like that. So I'm going to load that into the brush. Right. So again, what that means is that it's now in the brush, and I could go and paint with that if I wanted to stamp it down and so on. But that's not my intent. I don't want to use it as a paint tool. I keep it simply as an image in the custom brush. I might want to store it here as a reminder. I'm not going to do much with it. Maybe I'm going to make it look a little bit darker. If you want that to be night sky, you could go to hue saturation value, take the value down a little bit, right? And the saturation too, because at night we don't see really well what the colors give us. So it's a bit more on the grayscale side here. And then the hue, you might do a little bit more of a bluish tint or a little bit more of a greenish or whatnot. So that's something you can do, but still, we don't want to stamp it down, we don't want to paint it. We just want to keep it handy as the image that serves for the sky in the ray tracer. Right? So we can minimize this, just keep it there as a reminder. Fill settings, bye-bye. This image, bye-bye. So let's go back to the original image we had here. And we don't need to see the preview of the brush. Let's turn that off. Let's go back into the ray tracer, Puppy Ray. And this time still the CPU version, same settings, it remembers that. We did not log out or quit the program, so it still has that. And let's say, for instance, here, now let's see what are our skies. There it is. There is our Poison sky. And we're going to choose that one. So we now have that sky up in the sky, pun intended. And and it serves as the source for the global illumination if we ask it to do that, right? So we can have it lighting up the dark sides as well here. In fact, we can even turn the intensity of the sunlight off altogether and only use the sky as the illumination source. All right, let's do a quick render on that, maybe at medium quality, ray trace that. And so if you have a really high-end system, which I don't here, this is a 4th generation, maybe third generation i7. It's an i7, all right, but it's not the latest and greatest. It's at least 4 years old, maybe 5. And you can certainly do faster on the GPU. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and load undo this and then go to the GPU version with the graphic processor. And in fact, I was doing an animation in this one here, but I'm going to redo the whole thing. And I'm going to say clear the the path here. Let's go to fast preview or something like that. And you see now here it's doing the review immediately. Right, it's doing the rendering. This preview is a little bit bigger. The preview on the main image is happening right away, and so as you fly around, you see the rendering happening there. Now, I have to admit, I'm not using version 10 here. I'm using something that's a little bit forward-looking, kind of a teaser. And you notice we have a reflection happening down here at the bottom. All right, let me point that out a little bit better. So, so there is some extra stuff happening here. Right. For one, it also looks like we're looking through the murky water, but that might be for another reason, and that's because, well, I mean, see, these are some of the tricks you can play. If you have something like this down there in the swap image, that also will contribute to the to the rendering. Right. We have the elevation map that turns into this, but we also have this down here. Showing as the coloration, and even though it's flat, it still has the coloration. So what you want to do maybe is turn this a little bit blurry. Let's see what we could do to just blur it up a little bit here. Simple blur is probably all we need. Okay, and then go back and load. Where's that image? Was it this one? I forget which. No, it wasn't this one. Well, let's just load this entire thing here. Oh, and that, by the way, clears the image underneath it here, so we need to do this in the right order. Let's go back in the swap. Let's go put, you know what, let's put a little bit of a motion blur in there, right? Something that's going to be really distinct, maybe to show that there is some strong water current underneath it. And okay, that maybe not all the way that strong, so let's do an interactive undo, so we go somewhere, combine the two together. There you go. Alright, let me keep a snapshot of that, store the image copy, there it is, because we might want to reload that. Alright, keep in mind, every time you load the stored animation, that's what we have here. If this stored animation gets reloaded, it also wipes out the swap image. As you can see, the swap image is blank, so I need to restore that and then go back here. Alright, so back to our image, that's the brush image. We have, so that's really the three assets we have for the rendering. We have the main image, we have the swap image, and we have the brush image. Right? Those three assets, those three images are going to be all used in the rendering. And in the PuppyRay GPU edition, we now have a somewhat murky, blurry look down here, but we're still using the sky that I did earlier, right? It could be this one. It could be this one. That's the one we really want. Right? With this guy, we have our very stormy looking sky here. The sky, the fog is a little bit too close. We might want to bring that further back a little bit. You also might want to change the color. Right? Instead of this light blue, maybe a bit of a dark poison looking greenish, maybe green yellow. I don't know, play with those a little bit, right? And then we simply need to perhaps work on the color of the light source as well. Let's give it a blue star color. And so yeah, so but anyway, this fact here down here, this reflection, it seems that's actually something that's coming in a future release. We don't know yet when. It might be version 11. We're developing, we're having some exploratory experiences here and fun with it. So it allows you to create some other types of scenery not seen yet in PuppyRay. But certainly as far as like using the sky, you can do that already in version 9 or in version 10. So experiment with that. I'm going to go do a little fly through here, keyframe this, and then I'm going to go move into the scene, something like this, and then I'm going to start looking around. So as I keep moving, I want to also turn my head to a bit more up into the sky to look at something interesting, something like that. And then I'm gonna go and just keep walking in this direction here, flying, swimming, boating, whatever you want to call it, something like this. Now there's one more thing that's really interesting also in this version. Remember, I did turn the light off, and that's the sunlight that you know exists in earlier versions too. If I move it over here, you can see some change in the shadow, but there's more to it. In this version that's coming in the future, and that will be available to you as an upgrade if you have version 10, there is actually the sun being displayed here as well. Now we have a little glitch here in this version. Like I said, it's still in beta, but we do have a starlight being represented here, and maybe I need to be a bit more vigilant about where it's going to be showing. I can make it move up, make it go down. I can also change the size of it. There's the sun size right there. Let's say make this 1, 2, 3. And so now we have a respectable size sun here. But again, it's currently disconnect in terms of the direction in which the lighting occurs. These two are supposed to be connected. And they were at one point, and then it didn't anymore, and it will come back to the way we want it, right? You can always do some post effects on this too, by the way, with beautiful lens flares and stuff like that. But yeah, you can use this to create a beautiful sunset. Even see the reflection of it down here, right? Something like that. So I'm gonna go and just freeze it here, and you have now an animation. Let's say if we go to the fast preview, it might even show it to us in real time if it's fast enough. And I'm gonna go to high quality to render that, perhaps with some extra anti-aliasing. That's one thing. You don't need to necessarily go to final render or to final render. If it's fast enough at this level, sometimes all you need to do is, let's say, high quality, then maybe just increase the anti-aliasing steps. Let's go to 22 or something like that. Right, that may be just all you need to get some really nice quality rendering, especially if this is going to be just a background in your game. You don't need to render it to the highest possible, because it might take I've done some rendering that took a minute per frame. If you really push it, high resolution, super high quality, and all that stuff. Okay, so you can see how it's quite busy here for a while. I'm going to go down to a little bit less. Let's keep it 6 or 7, something like that, because we just want to do this quickly. Now animate, right, and keep the current settings and render. And at this point, we are looking at the rendering in progress. You see up here in the progress bar or in the animation bar, you'll see one frame after another being rendered. And since that is still too slow for my quick demo, I'm going to just beef it up here a little bit and say go to medium quality, and then perhaps, okay, high quality, but even bring down the anti-aliasing steps down to 3 or something like that. Right, and animate. Now the first couple of frames are going to be worthless because they were already rendered. So, oh no, actually it's doing the right thing and taking the original image again. Super. So here we go. Quick rendering, and thanks for watching. Again, the lighting we see here, this sky is not only showing here, it's also being used as that same image in the brush is being used for the lighting. The dark parts here are being brightened up with global illumination, thanks to being an image in the custom brush that we have stored here. We don't need to have it stored. It's just this is the stored copy, but the system has its own current copy, the active image used as the brush. So the brush image is one of the important assets, and that's why I call Project Dogwaffle a paint program that is really focused on painting. It's brush centric. It's focused on the brush, and by comparison, or as opposed to, for instance, a photo editing program, right, where it's probably more focused on layers. And this one here didn't start with focus on layers. We are catching up to that. We are adding more features and resources that will allow us eventually to have alpha blended layers. It's a long road though. There's a lot of filters, as you've seen a few here already. There are a lot of things that we need to do. We will probably by version 11 have a new brush engine, and that is what's needed to actually then make the step also into a an alpha-enabled transparency on the layers. We might have that in version 11. There's a lot of work, a lot of stuff to do, and a lot of improvements and modernization. We need to modernize some of the code. And so that's the progress, that's the effort underway right now. You can obviously, what you see right now here, you can actually also do if you look at the mirrored image. Some of that you can do in multipass rendering, right? If you combine the image with one that has the flat part turned invisible and then do a mirror reflection, there's probably ways to do something similar, but it's tedious, and this will in the future release let you do that a little bit faster in a little bit more snazzy way. Of course, we always want more, right? Now that we see this, we say, well, we want that water not to be plain like a mirror. We want it to be, some disturbance, some turbulence, some wavelets, some ripples, do some scattering, and then do some semi-transparency, and look at the murky stuff underneath it. Well, yeah, then get a full 3D program like Carrara and pay $300, right? It's a great tool. By the way, I love Carrara. It's my favorite 3D program. But we are doing some stuff here with imagers, a couple of tricks on the rendering. Well, it's actually a 3D rendering pipeline that Dan has implemented here. PuppyRay is not using OpenGL. It's his own 3D pipeline talking directly to the GPU, and it's got some interesting features, and so here they are. Here's the sun coming down for the final stretch, and with that I'll leave you watching one more animation that I created earlier of a slightly different scene, and hope you have a good look at that. And again, I can't stress the importance of upgrading. If you have version 8 or 7 or 9, 9.6, get yourself the upgrade to version 10, because the closer you are to the latest version, the better your discount will be when you're ready to upgrade. And you don't have to upgrade immediately, right? I mean, we don't release a major version and then that's it. There's usually some updates, some refinements, and some free updates, and that's what happened with version 10. We still call it version 10.0, but it's that release candidate, or RC35 when you look at the version that's on Steam, and 33 for the one that we sell direct. So there is constantly some minute enhancements and refinements, and sometimes they are not so minute, sometimes they are rather significant, and I want you to be able to enjoy them right from the beginning, and go through the joys and the pain at times, the pitfalls of a bug or pitfalls of something that may not quite be there yet. But soon enough you'll be able to enjoy doing something like this as well here. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.